Hi friends, welcome back. It is that time of the year. I sometimes really love doing these videos, but most of the time I find it really hard to put in order because everything is so interchangeable, especially when we get to the end of the year. And although usually halfway through the year, I get to do a what's my favorite, my top 10 of the year so far. Honestly, by the end, it sometimes changes the order, even if those films are in my list prior, because I fully get to reflect and, really take in how those films have felt over time for me and what's stuck with me. If you do see the mic come into the screen, people who watch me on Twitch know this mic often tries to give me a concussion, so fingers crossed. And if you didn't know, I am on Twitch. I stream horror games a couple times a week. I love Texas Chainsaw. I've been playing Alien Isolation lately. That's a whole nother story. But if you do want to check out my Twitch, I am live a lot. And if you follow me over there, you'll get notified when I go live. So I'll leave that link down below. So at number 10, we have Scream. And this is very topical now. Everything has changed. And I think this might be the last entry. And honestly, I'm personally hoping that this will be the last entry for... It's very sad, but for this storyline, everything that's happened is just crazy. This one is the next installment, of course, with the survivors of the Ghostface killers who are in this kind of sequel, requel, connected to the original characters. But in this one, they leave Woodsboro and they go to start a new chapter in New York City. What I loved about this film was the fan service, the fandom and the use of the props, and it's just like this whole ode to Scream itself. And yeah, I was really excited about where the storyline was going with Sam. So I really enjoyed this film. I thought the kills were good. It was just really gory, very frightening. And somehow the new backdrop of New York, it worked really well with Scream, so with Ghostface. So I was really impressed by that. Lots of Easter eggs in that film, so I was really enjoying that. After that, I have bumped it down a lot, but Megan, I loved Megan. Which I know is not a popular choice. It's a refined taste. I find Megan to be campy, wacky nonsense and the good type. People are very split on this film, but I take it at face value and I just think it's hilarious. Megan is, of course, the bizarre sci-fi horror about a robotics engineer at a toy company that builds a life-size doll for her niece to befriend. And from here, what could go wrong? I'm really excited to see what's coming from Megan in the future. I don't really care if we do a bunch of dumb sequels because this is the exact kind of movie that deserves that. So very excited for that. And I will have my what's anticipated in the new year video coming out soon. I just thought it was fun. And a lot of other films that are on this list are very serious. So it was nice to have some kind of comic relief that I didn't take too seriously. Okay, next is a newer entry from me, which is Raging Grace. I only just watched this and it deserved to be in the top 10, 100%. Raging Grace is a drama horror mystery about an undocumented immigrant who lands a job as a care worker for a terminal old man. She's trying to secure a better life for herself and her daughter. The whole way that this film is structured is so interesting. It's just such a good inside perspective into her life, Joy, the main character's life, her struggles and everything she's going through. But the way they present it, I thought it was just exactly how it should be. It hints at things but shows things very blatantly, and there's just no grand scene to kind of work that information in. It comes in so naturally, and I just love the way this film was written. This film does have a lot of layers, which usually I kind of stray away from. I do like more simple structures and stirring when it comes to drama horror, but I feel like it really works with all of the themes in this film, and it was a great mystery surprise. It's very sinister. It has just a lot of interesting themes, and you're not really sure where the true villain lies, which I also really like. I feel like it was a good surprise and mystery, and one thing that I find recently with a lot of horror movies that are mysteries is it seems very predictable, and this one I had no idea where it was going, but I liked the main character so much, I didn't care. And it just ended up being a really haunted tale, so it kind of checked off all of those boxes for me. Next is Evil Dead Rise. I found it really hard to work into my list because there's a lot I love about this film, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. This film is so simple. It is a very straightforward story, and the terror takes place very early on and just doesn't stop the whole film. And that's what I love about it, though. It never lets up. It's a very strong entry into the Evil Dead franchise. I think it's the perfect pairing for the new film, for the remake. It just all makes sense. Although when I first saw it, I do think that there is some kind of inconsistencies in the story. They're trying to do the overarching story, but everything else they did was fantastic, except for it being set in LA, which it doesn't seem like it's LA at all, but you can let that go since it takes place inside. The film follows a family reunion unlike any other when a woman returns to go see her sister's family and an earthquake takes place, unearthing an item that aims to unleash terror. The gore is great. I think that I had a different experience from some people who looked into the trailer or saw a lot of the marketing about the grater and things like that. I didn't see any of that, so I went in blind. And it was a very good blind viewing, very good one. And I rewatched it recently for a live stream I did with Vicky, Nightmare Maven, for Does This Offend You? And it just really does not let you go. I think it has a really good rewatchable factor, especially with a group. But again, it is quite a simple story. But I was just so impressed that they were able to follow up the first, Evil Dead remake that was such a big deal, Evil Dead, because that is the bloodiest horror film ever. So to be able to follow that up with as much intense gore as possible, I think is a great feat, and kudos. From there, I have something very dark, which I think is not a lesser known film, but a film that I don't think it will work for everybody, definitely. It's called PERTH Rebirth. This is a drama horror thriller about a morgue technician who successfully experiments on a human body to keep it alive. I don't want to say too much. I feel like the trailer gives away a lot and the blurb gives away a lot, but it's just such a dark story about death and life. It's both philosophical, psychological, and just really dark. It messes with things that cross so many boundaries and lines, especially within horror. So naturally I enjoyed it. Obviously we all have lines, but I really love looking at the darker side of life through fiction, and this film was really an interesting look at that, and it's just so raw. Both of the leads in this film are fantastic, and again, amazing writing because it says so much in the silence, and it is just a film full of dread. If you like dread heavy movies, dread horror drama, this is one for you. It's not for everybody. I want to say that it's not for everybody, but it definitely took me by surprise and it left me feeling quite low, but it impacted me, and that's what I look for in horror. So that's why it gets this spot. We're already up to number 5, halfway through. Another film that a lot of people, I guess the marketing wasn't very heavy in some countries, and not a lot of people talked about, is Dream Scenario. This film is genre bending, so it was hard to know whether to put this in this list or my other list, but there definitely is very clear horror elements, and it's very inspired by horror themes. I'll just put that lightly. This is Nicolas Cage, probably one of his best roles since Pig, but his best role, it's so well suited to him. He plays an average family man who begins to show up in others' dreams, and it becomes this viral sensation. He goes viral literally in people's dreams, and it's about the consequences of that. And the film has a lot of messaging about perception and taking responsibility for actions, and it just says so much about society, but through this really unique lens, dreams. And because of that, it's this amazing play on fantasy and horror at the same time, but then also this really strange psychological story. And there's just some scenes in this film that I felt was so powerful, and the whole idea of it I think is so unique and so fantastic the way it plays out. There are definitely parts of it that I wish they left out, and I wish they carried on with some of, if you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. I wish they carried on through the theming and really stuck it out, and they move around quite a bit. It becomes almost like sci-fi in some aspects, but it's a film I just haven't stopped thinking about, and I just think Nicolas Cage is perfect for this because he is one of those people who looks pretty average. He's not very unique by an everyday standard, but because we know him and he's such an iconic man, an iconic actor, it really works that he's the person who goes viral in people's dreams. It's such a clever idea, and if you want a film that's going to challenge you, and if you're into genre bending films, because it definitely is, it's funny, it's sad, it's awkward, it's scary at points, There's a lot to feel in this film, and I highly recommend it if you like genre bending films and something a little bit more challenging. Number 4 for me is Godzilla -1. I think this is going to be on everyone's top 10. I think 2 of these films are going to be on everyone's top 10, and this is one of them. Or most people's, I shouldn't say everyone's. This was such a cool surprise. Obviously, I went in blind once again, so I had no idea about the stylization. It was the perfect in-between of getting that dramatic early Japanese soap that, you know, Godzilla is cemented in, and the action and the way it looked was just superb. The story was beautiful, and although somehow a little bit predictable some parts, it was just done in such a beautiful kind of romantic sense. And I know not everyone thinks of Godzilla as like a horror movie, but I'm sorry, it's a horror. I'm putting it as a horror, and I thought it was just spectacular. It's just all of the themes that make up Godzilla together, because Godzilla has different metaphors throughout time, and so it was really interesting to see them in this time frame. As mentioned, the film takes place in post-war Japan when it's at its lowest point, and a new crisis emerges in the form of a giant monster baptized by the horrific power of the atomic bomb. The characters are great, the story's a journey, so it's well worth. It's only 2 hours, it's not even that long, but it's well worth the investment time. You get an actual payoff for it. It's just a really well-rounded story that technically is a creature feature, but it had an immense emotional roller coaster attached to a giant monster. They did it right, and I really enjoyed this film. Argentinian horror When Evil Lurks is the next spot on this list. This film, do not watch the trailer. I can't believe they show so much in the trailer. It is such a awesome, damning, dark story about possession, and it's told in such a interesting way about the spread of chaos and darkness. It's so scary. I wanted to pull my skin off a little bit. The movie is set in a remote village where 2 brothers find a demon-infected man, and they decide to get rid of his body, unaware of the consequences. I was also a fan of the director's other film, Terrified. If you haven't seen that one and you have seen When Evil Lurks, I highly recommend it. It's got that same strange darkness that it just feels unique. It is a story that we've heard before, but the way that they're presenting it is just so unique. So I really, really enjoyed this film. I don't want to say too much, but just the set dressing, and again, it's another journey where we move throughout the characters, but then also they again cross lines, which usually aren't crossed in horror movies. And some of the things I could not believe, they just happen right in front of you without any lead in. And I love that unexpected moment, instead of having a movie that we see quite often really slowly pointing towards something, hinting at something, and then you finally see it and you're like, oh my god, that's terrifying. It just drops it right in front of you, literally, and you have to deal with the consequences, the emotional consequences. And I really like that rug pull, and it just makes everything a little bit more scary because it's totally unpredictable. It took me to places I didn't think I'd go. It's a very sad, dark film that is just full of brutality. What's not to love? And my second on my list of top 10 is Brandon Cronenberg's new film, Infinity Pool. This is a sci-fi horror that is an absolute ride. I can definitely see the similarities in my top 10 because my number 1 is also a journey film, but this one, I wouldn't say so much a journey, but it definitely takes you, it's more of a journey of a character. So Infinity Pool takes place on a fictional island where a couple are staying at an all-inclusive resort, and here they meet other people who introduce them to the realities of this island and the corruption within the local government or local politics, consequences for actions that cannot be undone psychologically and physically. Of course, it's a Cronenberg, there's lots of body horror, those bits are absolutely wild, but just the mind, it really feels like a Black Mirror episode on crack. And of course, it has Mia Goth in it, who is, I mean, the casting for this whole film is fantastic, but Mia Goth shines. If you want to see Mia Goth like you've never seen her before, especially because she was able to keep her accent, she is so good in this film, and her progression of character is just chef's kiss once again. I really enjoyed this film. I've rewatched it a couple of times now, and every time it just gets better. It's a very, again, simple idea, but has a lot of surprises and bombs in the middle, and just the performance of Mia Goth alone carries the film, but then there's everything else in between, and of course the body horror, which almost takes a back seat to her performance at times. There's so much scary, ominous moments and aspects of this film. I don't know what I'm more scared of. The consequences that we find out about, Mia Goth. There's a lot going on in this film, and there's just a lot to love, a lot of action to love. And that brings me to my last film, my number one favorite horror movie of the year, which I know is not going to be everybody's, and basically a very small percentage of you, but I loved Beau is Afraid, and I honestly didn't expect to love it as much as I do. I went and saw this one twice in the cinemas. Every time I think about it, it just grows more on me. The film is not for everyone, another genre-bending film. This one is Arias is back for this journey, again, a journey film following Beau, who is this anxiety-ridden man who is dealing with loss and needs to find his way back home, basically. And it's this surrealist journey where a lot of people have interpreted what's happening in different ways. I definitely have my own beliefs on what's happening, but it's this strange metaphoric adventure from hell. It literally is. It's an adventure from hell, and the end is just, it left me breathless. It really did. And I know that it didn't have the same effect for everybody, and I totally get that. And I honestly didn't know how I was going to feel about it by the end, and then I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and then I went and saw it again, and I feel like every time I watch this film I get something different out of it, and it just felt like an experience. It felt honestly less like a movie and more like an experience happening to me. It is like being shaken up in a jar for 3 hours, and with a lot of surprises put right in front of you that you aren't expecting. This film can be pulled apart on so many different levels that doing a deep dive on it would probably take years. But I thought it was a fantastic piece of art, and it really threw me, and I'm just really glad it exists. It really made my 2023. But let me know below what made your 2023. I would love to hear it. And if you're looking for what didn't make my 2023, I have a list of movies that really disappointed me this year. Don't worry, I got the top and the bottom. These are the ones that really stood out because I was looking forward to them and then things disappointed me. So I do back up my claims. But I hope you're having a fantastic day. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. And I'll see you guys very soon for a wrap up and then my top other films of 2023. Bye, friends.